To cast a shadow is the most aggressive act a human being can commit. It is the undeniable proof that one occupies space, obstructs light, and possesses the terrifying weight of existence. Before the year 1300, God's saints did not cast shadows. They were weightless, translucent ideas floating in a golden, airless vacuum, suspended in the hieratic stagnation of the Byzantine tradition. Then came Giotto di Bondone, a man who committed the theological heresy of dragging the divine down into the dirt. He did not merely paint figures, he invented the gravitational pull of the modern soul. We stand today in a digital ether, a new maniera greca of backlit screens and weightless avatars, desperate for the very thing Giotto forced Western civilization to confront, the heavy, burdensome, and rot-prone reality of the physical body. To understand why this Florentine disrupted the visual cortex of Europe, we must first dismantle the romanticized fable woven by Giorgio Vasari. We need not believe the convenient myth of Cimabue discovering a shepherd boy sketching sheep on a slate of rock in the Mugello Valley to grasp the truth of Giotto's origins. Whether true or apocryphal, the story serves a specific function. It frames Giotto as an observer of nature, not a copier of prototypes. While his contemporaries were busy replicating the nth-generation copies of Greek icons, Giotto was looking at the way a cloak hangs off a peasant's shoulder, or the way a neck crinkles when a head turns in grief. He was an empiricist in a world of symbolists. The artistic landscape he inherited was dominated by the maniera greca, the Greek style. This was not incompetence, it was a deliberate theological choice. Artists like Cimabue or Copo di Marcovaldo painted the Madonna not as a woman, but as a conduit. The gold leaf background was not decorative, it was the uncreated light of God, negating time and space. The striations of gold on the drapery, chrysography, denied the volume of the body beneath, turning the figure into a flat pattern of spiritual energy. Giotto looked at this shimmering cage and smashed it. His weapon was chiaroscuro, though the term would not be codified until much later. He understood that light, falling from a specific source, creates form. In the Ognissanti Madonna, currently residing in the Uffizi, we see the destruction of the icon and the birth of the organism. Painted around 1310, this panel is a manifesto of mass. Compare it to Duccio's Rucellai Madonna. Duccio is a master of lyrical line and color. His figures are aristocratic ghosts. Giotto's Madonna is a formidable architectural presence. She has a lap. The drapery between her knees creates a deep trough of shadow that implies the heavy, solid thighs of a woman capable of childbirth. Her breasts press against the wool of her white tunic. The Christ child is not a miniature philosopher. He is a heavy toddler with a bulging belly, sitting with palpable weight. The throne itself is a revelation of empirical perspective. The steps jut out into our space, inviting us to climb, while the side panels recede, enclosing the Virgin in a tangible box of space. This is not a vision. It is a confrontation with a body that displaces air. But the true theater of Giotto's revolution, and the place where we must scrutinize his technique with forensic intensity, is the Scrovegni Chapel in Padua. Commissioned by Enrico Scrovegni, the son of a notorious usurer, whom Dante placed in the seventh circle of hell, the chapel was an act of expiation, a desperate attempt to buy salvation through beauty. It is a damp, terrifyingly intimate barrel-vaulted womb where the blue sky of the ceiling presses down on the viewer. We must speak of this blue. The ceiling and the backgrounds are not the gold of eternity, they are the azure of the temporal atmosphere. While the exact pigment analysis has sparked debates, whether purely azurite or the ruinously expensive ultramarine derived from Afghan lapis lazuli, the technical detail is the crucial detail. The blue was often applied a secco, on dry plaster, using a binder, because these pigments could react chemically with the wet lime of the buon fresco, turning a sickly green or flaking off. This technical necessity means the sky is fragile, it decays. Giotto placed the sacred history of salvation against a sky that is subject to the ravages of time, just like the viewers standing beneath it. The narrative cycle here is not a collection of isolated images, but a relentless psychological machine. In the meeting at the Golden Gate, Giotto achieves a density of emotion that makes the surrounding stones seem brittle. Joachim and Anna meet at the bridge. Their embrace is not the polite symbolic touching of cheeks seen in earlier manuscripts. It is a fusion. The arch of their bodies creates a single solid pyramid of intimacy. Giotto crops the composition at the edges. A shepherd is cut off on the left, implying that the world continues beyond the frame. But look at the eyes. They are locked together. The kiss is so physically pressing that their faces seem to deform slightly. This is the invention of privacy in public art. Move your eye to the kiss of Judas. The chaos of the scene is palpable, a riot of pikes, torches, and horns against the dark blue sky. But the center is a vacuum of deadly silence. Giotto wraps Judas in a yellow cloak, a color traditionally associated with envy and betrayal, but here used as a compositional device to swallow the figure's anatomy. We see no arms, no legs, only a sweeping mass of intent. Judas's face, with its heavy brow and retreating forehead, is almost bestial, a physiognomic contrast to the serene columnar dignity of Christ. They stare at each other at point-blank range. It is the most intense stare-down in the history of painting. Giotto realized that the drama was not in the swords, but in the micro-distance between the lips of the traitor and the cheek of the Savior. The technique of buon fresco, painting on wet plaster, demanded a decisiveness that separates the master from the hesitating amateur. The artist had to lay down a patch of wet plaster, the giornata, corresponding to what he could paint in a single day before the lime set and carbonation locked the pigment into the wall. There is no erasing, there is no fixing it later. We can map Giotto's labor by tracing the seams of these giornate. In the Lamentation, the sky is a patchwork of days, but the figures are often painted in large, bold sections. This required a mental projection of the finished image that borders on the supernatural. He was not just painting, he was managing the chemical hardening of the wall against the clock. In the Lamentation, Giotto makes a compositional choice that is nothing short of insolent. He places two massive figures in the immediate foreground, crouching, with their backs turned completely to the viewer. They are heavy woolen humps of green and yellow. By denying us their faces, he forces us to look over their shoulders, implicating us in the circle of mourners. We are not watching a stage, we are in the pit. These bulky forms anchor the composition, pulling the eye down to the tragic diagonal of the rock ridge that slices across the fresco, driving the gaze inevitably to the face of the dead Christ. The angels above are not decorative putti, they are foreshortened, writhing studies in agony. One tears its chest, another throws its head back in a primal scream. Giotto understood that grief is physically disfiguring. It is essential to address the Assisi problem without descending into the quagmire that traps lesser critics. The cycle of the life of St. Francis in the Upper Basilica of Assisi is the battleground of attribution. Did Giotto paint it?
Was it the shadowy Isaac master? Was it a Roman workshop influenced by Pietro Cavallini? The knowledgeable detractors love to cite the stylistic discrepancies between Assisi and Padua to dismantle Giotto's authorship. The figures in Assisi are more Roman, the drapery more incised, the spatial logic different. Let us concede the ambiguity. Whether Giotto held the brush for every square inch of Assisi is irrelevant to his impact. The intellectual shift occurred regardless. If Assisi is Giotto, it is a young, striving Giotto. If it is not, then the master's true voice is found in the undeniable silence of the Bardi and Peruzzi chapels in Santa Croce, Florence. In the Bardi chapel, painted in his maturity, likely the 1320s, we see a Giotto who has moved beyond the need for narrative clutter. The Death of St. Francis is a masterpiece of spatial emptiness. The figures are spaced out. The architecture is severe. He has learned that void carries as much weight as matter. The fresco cycle here was whitewashed in the 18th century and rediscovered in the 19th, leading to disastrous restorations that repainted dry patches in a pseudo-Giotto style. It was not until the mid-20th century that these accretions were stripped away, revealing the ghostly, damaged, yet infinitely powerful original surface. To look at the Bardi Chapel today is to look at a ruin, but the structure of the genius remains. The way the monks kiss the hands and feet of the saint is not ritualistic, it is heavy, clumsy, human affection. The drapery responds to the gravity of the bodies beneath, creating distinct columnar folds that would influence Masaccio a century later. Giotto's perspective deserves a brutal clarification. He did not possess the mathematical linear perspective that Brunelleschi and Alberti would codify in the Quattrocento. There is no single vanishing point. His architecture often looks like stage props or doll houses with scales that make no logical sense. Figures are often as tall as the city gates. The pedants will point this out as a flaw. It is not a flaw. It is an empirical struggle. Giotto was working with intuitive perspective, eyeing the recession of space based on observation rather than calculation. This gives his spaces a psychological validity that the cold math of the Renaissance sometimes lacks. In the Feast of Herod in the Peruzzi Chapel, the corner of the room juts out, creating a convex space that pushes the figures towards us. It is disorienting, yes, but it captures the claustrophobia of the scene. We must also scrutinize the materiality of his paint handling. Giotto is brushwork, visible where the surface is well preserved, creates texture through a dense network of hatching. He builds the flesh tones from a verdaccio, green earth, underlayer, layering warm ochres and whites on top. This interaction between the cool undertone and the warm surface mimics the translucency of human skin, blood beneath the dermis. This was a radical departure from the opaque, enameled surfaces of his predecessors. He was painting the physics of flesh. Consider the Stefaneschi triptych in the Vatican. While workshop assistants certainly had a hand in it, a standard practice that modern obsessives fail to forgive, the conception of the martyrdom of Peter is brutal. The cross is upside down. The gravity pulls Peter's robes down, revealing his ankles. The executioners strain with the physical effort of hoisting a human body. Giotto never lets you forget that killing a man is hard work, that lifting a body is heavy, that the physical world resists our will.
There is a philosophical darkness to Giotto that is often ignored in favor of his charming narrative clarity. By giving his figures mass, he subjected them to the tyranny of time and entropy. To have a body is to be capable of decay. The Last Judgment in Padua is a meat grinder. The breakdown of order in the hell scene is not just theological, it is biological.
Bodies are excreting, consuming, being skewered. It is a digestive tract of damnation. This is the worldview of a man who lived through the realities of medieval disease and squalor. He did not idealize the human condition, he solidified it. His depiction of the distinct textures of wool, rock, and wood shows an obsession with the specific. In the Adoration of the Magi, the camel is rendered with a bizarre, specific focus. The artist had likely never seen one, or perhaps saw an exotic beast in a menagerie, but he attempts to give it a specific biological reality distinct from the horse or the donkey. He is categorizing the material world. Giotto's legacy is often simplified as leading to the Renaissance. This is a linear reduction. Giotto did not just pave the way for Masaccio and Michelangelo. He created a standard of existential weight that Western art struggled to maintain. The Giotteschi, his immediate followers like Taddeo Gaddi or Maso di Banco, often mimicked the bulk without the gravity. They painted heavy sacks, not heavy souls. It took a century for Masaccio to look at the Bardi Chapel and understand that the weight was internal as well as external. When Masaccio painted the Expulsion in the Brancacci Chapel, the agony of Adam's stride is a direct citation of Giotto's heavy-footed peasants. Even the humor in Giotto is tectonic. In The Marriage at Cana, the pot-bellied wine steward tasting the water-turned wine is a study in sensory skepticism. His skepticism is written in the physicality of his posture. Giotto observes the mundane, the dog looking up at Joachim, the sleeping soldiers in the resurrection, and grants these trivial moments the same monumental dignity as the Transfiguration. This is a democratization of the visual field. If light falls on it, it matters. We must stop treating these frescoes as wallpapers for a history textbook. They are desperate, silent screams about the nature of being. The monochrome vices and virtues in the dado level of the Scrivegni Chapel, painted in grisale to resemble stone sculpture, are psychological archetypes. Envy is shown with a snake issuing from her mouth and biting her own eyes. It is a shocking image of self-destruction. Despair, desperatio, has hung herself, her body swinging dead weight, the rope taut. This is not a symbol, it is a forensic report on suicide. The grim reality of the hanging body, the slackness of the limbs, is observed with a cold, clinical eye. Giotto di Bondone was a businessman, a landowner, a man who pursued his debtors with the same ruthlessness with which he pursued a contour line. He was not a saint. He was a man of the earth, painting for men of the earth. He took the terrifying, abstract concepts of Christianity and translated them into the vernacular of sweat, wool, and stone. Why does this matter to the modern eye, exhausted by the infinite scroll of weightless JPEGs? Because Giotto reminds us of the dignity of mass. He reminds us that we are not pixels. We are heavy things that occupy space, hurt, age, and eventually rot. In a world of digital transparency, Giotto's opacity is a radical anchor. He forces us to look at the heaviness of a mother's knee, the density of a traitor's cloak, the crushing weight of a blue sky that might peel away at any moment. He did not invent the Renaissance. That is too polite. He invented the visual perception of the human burden. He proved that a painted surface could hold the weight of a soul. And when you stand before that lamentation, looking at the wall of backs he built between you and the dead God, you are not looking at a picture, you are looking at the invention of your own heavy, tragic, beautiful reality. The golden cage is broken, you are free, and you are heavy, and that is the price of admission to the modern world.